Welcome back. Now, y'all already know we're here for a good time, not a long time, so let's jump right into it. If you're new here, my name is Nadia. I'm the owner of Click Pop Studio, and we are a colorfully loud creative agency for bold brands. And today, we're going to be talking about how you can make 10K in one day as a photographer. So let's jump right into it. Now, let me preface this by saying, you cannot make $10,000 in one day as a photographer, especially if you're just starting out. And even if you are a pro like me, who has been in the business for over 10 years, it still takes a lot just to get to that 10K. 10K doesn't happen in one day. 10K happens over the development of time, your skill set, your website, your business, all of that. Even when it comes to the project itself, it takes weeks, sometimes months of planning a large project that costs 10K and up. So essentially, if you're counting that one project day, that shoot day, technically is 10K in that one day, but the amount of work that it takes to lead up to that is way more than a day. So if you're on social media and you hear these people saying, oh, make this money in a day, make this money in a week, believe me, there's a lot of work behind the scenes leading up to that big number. So when it comes to you developing, especially if you're in the beginning stages of your photography career, please do not think that there is some kind of get rich quick scheme or some quick fast pass button or pass just to get to that final number. Because if you're at the very beginning of your photography career and someone says, hey, I have a project, my budget is 10 grand, what can you do? 9 times out of 10, your work is not going to look like it costs $10,000 to make. And if someone is really investing that kind of money, it needs to look like is worth that kind of money. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you want to figure out how you can begin your journey of making 10K in a day as a photographer, stay tuned. If you were looking for this video to be a quick fast pass for you to make $10,000, I'm so sorry I tricked you. But definitely stay here if you want to learn a little something. If you're still looking for that get rich quick scheme, you're going to have to find another video. I don't have it. Okay, so I've talked about this in a few other videos that I have posted above here if you want to check it out. But number one on my list for getting to that 10K in one day is having a concrete onboarding client system. This is something that you have to have when you are trying to get those 10K jobs. Now, when it comes to these 10K jobs, I just mean commercial jobs, larger jobs, companies with larger budgets. In the very beginning of my photography career, I was not making $10,000. I was making around $200, especially when I started with portrait photography. Now, when I developed my skill set and switched over to product photography, I was making around $1,200 a project. And that's a good chunk of change coming from $200, between $200 and $600 for portrait photography, jumping to $1,200 to $1,500. That's a big jump. But I studied and studied and studied and developed my process in order to attract those clients that are looking for that type of organization and control when it comes to a business that's all about getting the job done. Naturally, when you have a client onboarding process, you are catering to that client from beginning to end. You are guiding them on how to talk to you, meaning having calendars, inquiry forms, emailing. You are guiding them through the process of understanding your contracts, your projects, your timelines. You're communicating with them how organized you are within the entire process so that they can have an assurance and a trust in you that you can get the job done, because you're basically answering all the questions that they have before they even ask them. So you have that process leading all the way to the actual execution date of you shooting the project, as well as developing and editing. You need to have that process of communication streamlined so that you can communicate that quickly, because a lot of times clients have certain deadlines. Sometimes they're short deadlines, sometimes they're long deadlines, but either way, you need to be able to be adaptable when communicating your process, which starts at the client onboarding process in the very beginning. Number 2 on this list is understanding how to communicate your skill set and process of execution. Now, we talked about this a little bit in step 1, being able to communicate those things during the onboarding process, but in further meetings that you have with your clients, they want to understand what kind of realistic timeline you think the project can be done within, because most times clients will say, we need this done ASAP, we need it right away. And the key is always to under-promise and over-deliver. You never want to over-promise and under-deliver. A lot of times people make that mistake because they don't understand their own skill set and execution, because all they're thinking about is making that money. Money will come. You have to create a concrete process when it comes to communicating and consistently hit that mark and execute it. Now, I've done this for so long, I can communicate my process backwards and forwards without even thinking, because I understand my entire process, my skill set, my techniques, all of that. And that's something that you really need to develop within small projects and work your way up to big projects. This is something that I discuss with my clients on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis when I'm working with them. Now, number 3 on this list is having a concrete portfolio. This is something that you should have. And I'm not talking about social media. Social media is like your creative journal. It showcases your personality, your process, your lifestyle, your work, your behind the scenes, all of that. Your portfolio is your curated gallery of final projects. It's supposed to show your range as a photographer. It's supposed to show your imagination, your skill set, your technicality. It's supposed to showcase the quality of your editing, all of that. This is something that clients need to be able to review in order to make a decision about hiring you. They need to see the range. They need to see the levels of difficulty, if you can pull off simple projects versus more intricate projects. You need to have a large range of photography projects within your portfolio so that you can look well-rounded to potential clients. This is where personal projects come into play. You don't want to rely only on client projects, especially when you're just starting out, because when you're just starting out, you don't have clients. So it's up to you to really come up with your own imaginative, creative projects and execute those. You need to be treating every personal project as if a commercial client is hiring you, meaning you need to organize it. You know, if you're building a team, contact hair, makeup, lighting crew, digitex, everybody that you would need in order to execute a full-on commercial shoot. Find people, find your peers in your groups. You know, if you have a little bit of money, hire them. If not, make it a time for print type of situation so that you can understand and get a feel for how to direct an entire shoot, how to organize, how to work with people, how to communicate with people. Because when a big client is hiring you, they want to know that you can take care of the entire job. Whether that's you orchestrating the entire shoot or you hiring a set producer to do the logistics for you. They want to know that you understand the lingo, you understand the language, and that you can communicate that back to them so that you can get the job done. So take every personal project seriously and do your best to make sure that it's portfolio worthy, because what's on your website is a representation of you and your work. If your work on your website is trash, that's a representation of your skill set at that particular moment, and 9 times out of 10, a large client will pass you by. So take your time and develop that. It doesn't happen overnight. It definitely didn't happen overnight for me. And just know that you're going to be working on the website for as long as you decide to be a photographer. There's no ceiling to where you're just like, okay, I've made it, because you're going to be learning every step of the way. I can't say that I have photographed everything and now I know how to do everything. I'm constantly learning on the job. But because I developed that foundational skill set in the very beginning and I've been consistent over the past few years, it's easy for me to pivot and adjust and adapt when new projects come my way that I'm not too familiar with. So definitely keep that in mind. Next on my list is showing up consistently on all platforms, whether you have just a website, social media, blogs, threads, because that's something new, Twitter, wherever you are posting your business and wherever your audience is, show up consistently. Show them the behind the scenes of your work. Show them the projects that you're working on. Show them your experiments. Show them your failures. Show them how you pivot out of those failures and turn those failures into something unique and interesting. It's all about sharing your story and your journey, because I've said before in other videos, in service-based industries like photography, you're selling your services to clients, but you're also selling yourself and your personality. Social media, like I said, is your creative journal. So people are invested in watching to understand who you are and what you do and how you do it, so that they can gain a trust for your personality. If a potential client is looking at you and your work and your social media and they don't like your personality, even if your work is amazing, the most beautiful thing they've ever seen, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to hire you because they don't like your personality. You have to be able to be adaptable and digestible to the particular client that you want to work with. You know, I'm not for everybody. Everybody isn't for me. So the people that gravitate to me are the people that I gravitate to, and I love working with them. So it's all about just being true to yourself. Don't try to put on, don't try to perform. Don't try to keep up with your peers or keep up with people that you like to watch on social media. Just be you. You are unique, and you are the only one that knows how to do what you know how to do. That's all I got to say about that. Now, next on my list is understanding how to price for your services. Now, this conversation has come up in so many videos that I've seen, you know, from people saying, charge what you're worth, or like, never charge under this or never offer sales. It's all about what you have to offer in your skill set. For example, let's say you want to charge by the hour. How much do you want to make an hour? Let's say you want to make $100 an hour. That's not astronomical. Based on your skill set, you can charge whatever you want. So if you say you want to make $100 an hour and it takes you 4 hours to complete the project, then your base rate is $400. Maybe you want to tack on another $200 for that for labor, maybe editing, all of that jazz, but your base rate will be that $400 for that specific project. Or maybe you want to charge per image. So for simple e-commerce images, I've seen the prices start at between $25 and $100 per image. Now let's say you have a package of 10 images at $100. That's $1,000. That's $1,000 for that 10 image package. And that will be your base rates. If you want to go off of that route of charging based on the amount of images that a client wants, then you can say, okay, our rate started at $1,000. And then you can add on your taxes or add on a la carte images to really figure out that number. And that's how you begin to develop your foundation of how you want to charge, or charging your worth, so to speak. I think of it as charging for the amount of work that you have to do. If it takes me a full day to do some really custom, intricate work, like the images that you see here, I'm going to charge for that. If I say, okay, I want to charge $400 per image, $600 per image based on the amount of difficulty or intricacy of this image, then that's what I'm going to charge. And if a client wants that, and if they have that budget based on the work that I've been putting out and my portfolio and everything else they've seen, then they're not going to shy away from that large $6,000 number for that package that they're looking for, because they want exactly what they want. And so you can't be afraid to bump those numbers up, but your work has to also reflect that number. We all want to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, but if your work does not reflect that, then you need to be fair to yourself as well as future clientele so that you can continue to grow within your journey as a photographer. You will get to those large numbers eventually, but don't rush that process, because again, if you get to a point to where you're over-promising and under-delivering, that's when you start to really damage your reputation as well as your business. And you don't want to lose that trust within your current clients or potential clients. Now, next on that list is understanding licensing when you're working with commercial clients. Now, licensing that's an interesting ocean to be in. There's a lot of waves in that space of charging for licensing. And again, it really depends on where you are. If you want to go with industry standard, it helps to have a lawyer that you can get advice from to understand how much you should charge for licensing. And to give you a quick definition of licensing, when you're working with a large company that wants to post your images, let's say just on social media or their website, you can offer them a licensing contract, meaning that they're paying you for the service of taking the photos, doing the job, but they're also paying you a fee to rent these images for a year, because technically you own the images. Now, there are three different types of contracts that you can have. And I think on my list, I talk about that a little bit later, but there's a work for hire contract, meaning if someone hires you to do a job and you do that job, once they pay you, you hand over the images, they own the images outright. That's a work for hire. That's typically when you are salary based. If a company hires you, anything you produce for them, they own, but they pay you a salary. So it's like you're getting something from it. Now, for smaller businesses that can't really afford to pay licensing, typically I may use a work for hire contract for those very small clients, because 9 times out of 10, they're just using the images locally, not necessarily commercially. Now, the second type of contract would be a licensing contract. Now, that's if someone wants to post these images, worldwide. They want to post these images on packaging, billboards, magazines. They're going to be posted in commercial spaces. Then that's when you can charge for licensing. And in that licensing, they can rent those images for 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 years. Basically, when they rent these images, they are the owners of this license for that span of time. And once that license is over, they then turn over those images back to you. It's similar to seeing images like cook pot roast. You may see that on the cover of a cookbook. And you may see this specific cookbook, this specific pot roast image on another book like another year or so later. that means that that particular book, that company only licensed that image for a certain amount of time. So once that license is over, you can then sell that license to someone else if they want to use that image. That's how a lot of photographers make their profit when it comes to photography. Now, doing the work of photography is a job within itself, and you can make money, but you make a lot more money in a short amount of time when you can license your images, if they are good enough to be licensed. I want to stress that. Again, the skill set has to be there. The third type of contract is the full usage buyout contract. That's if a client wants to own the copyright outright. They want full usage. They want a buyout. Now, when it comes to a full buyout contract, that's where a photographer can make the most money. The number is what you want to make it. I can't really give you a specific number, but depending on what you're photographing, where these images are going to go, based on the advice your lawyer may want to give you, you could make a nice chunk of change off of a client purchasing the rights to images that you produce. I'm talking in the high thousands, 10 and up per image possibly, or per grouping of images. Let's start there. But there are a lot of different ways that you can make money as a photographer that span beyond you actually just photographing and booking job to job. You can make money off of work that you've already done in the past, but again, that skill set has to be up there. So that's a quick spiel on licensing in general. If you want to learn more about that, definitely hit me up in the comments below if you have any questions. If you want me to make a full-on video going more in depth about that, I can do that as well. Just let me know. Okay, so funny enough, the next thing on my list was having contracts for all occasions, and that's your work for hire contract that we discussed earlier, your licensing contracts, as well as your full buyout contracts. Now, full buyout and licensing kind of go hand in hand, but they are two different things. The one is renting and one is owning. Now, if I could choose the kind of contract I would love to be signed every single time I do a project, it would be the buyout, because I would be making a nice chunk of change every project that I do, and who doesn't want that? Next on my list would be having negotiation skills. Now, this is something that you can develop. I also recommend you getting a lawyer so that you can go over bigger contracts so that they can kind of handle that negotiation for you. That's something that I do. And also, let me stress this, y'all. You don't have to be rich in order to have a lawyer. Like, you really don't. Most lawyers work on a project-to-project basis. So if you sign on with a lawyer and they are your designated lawyer, you don't have to have them on call. Now, if you got the money to have a lawyer on call, kudos to you. But my lawyer works with me on a project-to-project basis, meaning if I'm working with a potential client and they want me to sign their contract, I can send that over to my lawyer. They can review that, and then I pay the fee for them reviewing it and basically handling that negotiation. Once that's done, I can continue on and get paid for that project. So it does cost money, but it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg in order to have that extra protection and guidance from someone that really understands the legal system in order to protect yourself within this industry. So having the negotiation skills is something that you can develop. Again, it's something that's good to have, but also having that extra coverage of a lawyer is perfect. Now, sometimes I negotiate projects without my lawyer, but that's because I've worked with them long enough to become comfortable with being able to stand my ground, name my price, and really talk with the person that I'm talking to understand how we can both be happy in a project that is gonna maybe cost a little bit more than they can afford, but I still want to make sure that I'm making the money that makes sense for my business. So I'm comfortable in that space to a degree, but I'm really thankful that I do have a lawyer to lean on. It's something I do recommend that y'all get eventually. Don't be scared to do it. Google is free. It's free, y'all. And so I don't want you to be intimidated by just the word lawyer, or the word accountant, because you also need one of those too, especially if you're bringing in a lot of money. Taxes are real, and you have to pay them at the beginning of every year. So get an accountant if you don't want to deal with the nuances of making sure that all of your expenses for your business are on the up and up throughout the year. Okay, so we mentioned this earlier, but the next thing on this list would be day rates. Understanding what your rate is per day. Now, we talked a little bit about this when we discussed charging your worth, and I broke down how you could do that based on charging per hour or charging per image. Now, when you're on larger projects, most times clients will ask you what your day rate is or what your half day rate is. And typically those projects are with clients with bigger budgets. So it's really up to you to figure out what your rate is. I would say the first time that I was asked that question, I was already booking clients at around $5,000 per project. And so with the advice of another photographer who had been doing way bigger commercial projects than I had ever even imagined at that point, I reached out to them on social media hoping that they'd get back to me, because I was like, I just need someone to tell me because I just don't know. And I gave them the specs of the project, and they recommended to me that I say that my day rate is around $7,000 per day. Based on the project and how aloof that particular client was being, they wouldn't advise me going under that, especially if I'm already charging around $5,000 for a project on my own. Bump it up to another $2,000 to see what they say. If they're cool with that, then you probably didn't charge enough, but you're still making a good chunk of change, and you know for next time. So that was my first guesstimation at understanding how to charge my day rate. But again, by then, I had already built my business up to where I could successfully and confidently book people at $5,000 per project. So it really depends on your skill set, where you are, and your comfortability when communicating with clients, and also the projects that you already have under your belt. So when I did that project, I was fully prepared to execute the way that they needed me to. And during that job, I realized, I should have charged more money. And I knew for next time. And so the next time, someone came around asking what my day rate was, I made that number bigger. So it's all about learning that process and just growing over time. Now, you see, I'm already at $7,000. And that was, throughout that span of time, that was probably within 3 years of me being in my product photography business journey. But before that, I was doing portrait photography for around 5 years. So that's 8 years of work and learning and technique under my belt just to get to $7,000 within that 3-year span of that niche down profession. So again, the 10K does not happen overnight, but I'm hoping that me telling you this is giving you more of an understanding of how you can too eventually get to that 10K. Okay, and the last thing I want to put on this list is something that people hate to hear, but in order for you to get to 10K in one day, you have to have the experience under your belt. You have to have that experience. Everything that we talked about within the last few bullet points all surround the point of having experience, gaining experience, building things off of that experience. You need to have the experience in order to land those jobs. Meaning, with that gained experience, you are developing your client onboarding process, you are building your portfolio, you're building your range as a creative, you are understanding organization on how to hire people, how to structure projects. You are learning all of the jobs that it takes in order to successfully book a large client, because you can communicate all of the intricacies of that project. That is where your experience comes into play. And so once you've mastered that and have developed all of the things that you need in order to get those 10K projects, when you speak to a client on the phone and they're asking you about your services and giving your process on your timelines, that's when you can book that 10K project, because you're answering all the questions that they have to ask. You're making them comfortable with your process. You're assuring them that you can execute it properly. And they have examples of your past range of work and your experience to back that up, so that they can fully trust in you to hand you over that large lump sum of money. And so, yeah, that's pretty much how you do it. Again, it's not something that you can do in a day. It takes years of development. It takes years of practice, building an actual business that makes sense to the client that's looking at that business in order to make that 10K in a day. I hope that y'all have learned some things. If I left anything out or if I didn't cover something that you want to know, feel free to hit me up in the comments below. If you like this video, please like this video. Please subscribe. Join the family. We discuss all things business and photography over here. And I'm a nerd at heart, so I love learning and educating the things that I learn. Educating y'all about the things that I learned. So definitely stay tuned for the next video popping up. If you're looking for more one-on-one assistance when it comes to brand development or building your photography portfolio or just jumping into photography in general, click the description link in my bio. You'll be able to communicate with me and we can figure out how to fit you in and get you started on your journey. That's all for now, and I guess I'll talk to you guys later. See you next time. Bye.